Yes, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, everyone, depending where you are. Welcome to Connect Africa to our bi weekly session for now every Tuesday and Thursday here at Connect Africa with our Pan Africanist analyst, Kwame Gonza. So today we have for you a very interesting and dynamic topic in the continent. That's happening actually as we speak, which is the accusation by the United States of South Africa allegedly over arms supply to Russia. So, as we always do it, we ask what's happening, but to really go to the core point, we're gonna bring you a historical background of the relation between the two, and then analyze really what caused the tension between these two countries, uh, and of course. The main aim of this platform is to give it that Pan African perspective to anything that we are discussing here, because that's why we bring the topic first of all, because it affects Africa. Yeah, those will be the three main talking points, but there might be questions arising from our discussions or perhaps from our viewers. Bear with us while we are doing the introduction. Please share this link to your network, to your friends. Let them hear. It's all about education, it's all about information. Let's empower each other. Knowledge is a power. Yeah, having said that, I would like to welcome my brother Kwame. Welcome, Kwame.
Thank you very much, Mahlet. I hope you can hear me very well and the
Loud and
viewers.
clear. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Today is a very interesting topic and I'm really excited. So if you are out there and you are watching, first of all, let me greet you. Greetings to all of you who are out there watching us. Uh, Let me encourage you to invite others, share the link. Just take the link and share it with others so that they can join us in this discussion. You know, when you contribute through the chat, we are also energized and then we pick up sometimes some of these talking points. But the subject today is very, very interesting. And it is interesting because of the way the United States is behaving towards Africa. We have spoken about this in the past, why the United States is behaving the way it is behaving. We have spoken about South Africa in the past, its position since 2020. It has been, South Africa has been instrumental in pushing a Pan-African foreign policy. When you look at the foreign policy of South Africa, it has been very Pan-African. If you look at people like Madam, Naleda Pandor, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Foreign Relations of South Africa, you can see that South Africa has been on a Pan-African trajectory. So when we are discussing, we want everyone to be involved. This is very important. And as Mahlet has rightly mentioned, these discussions are not meant only to stop here. Our discussions are meant to push us towards an African solution. Our discussions for us, they are not just for clickbaits and excitement, but they are rather meant to push us towards a certain direction, and that direction which we are working on the ground, not just talking here on the platform, is the unification of the African continent. And Thursday, we'll be coming with another topic, which is very important. We are looking at investments. So all these things, we are talking about them, but on the ground, also, we are working with the different, Pan-African organizations and bodies and individuals to be able, to contribute our quota to the Pan-African agenda of unifying Africa. So what are you doing out there? You have to support this channel. You have to support a channel like this one, which is doing the work, not only talking on a platform, but is doing the work out there on the ground. So come out there, support the channel, share the channel, like the channel, comment down in the section so that the YouTube algorithm can pick up these broadcasts, and these broadcasts can be able to go very fast. So Mahlet, forgive me for talking very much, but I'm very excited about the subject and the topic that we are going to talk about today. and South Africa's position. What has been the response? South Africa has really come out and responded in a very strong, way, which is very encouraging to all Africans. So thank you very much, and thank you for all the people who are watching us. Thank you, Mahlet.
Thank you, Kwame. Indeed, that introduction was really necessary, and to remind our viewers what it is about, what we are doing here, and of course to share the information. Having said that, also please, I want to remind you we have a PayPal account, so I will share it here in the chat section. So please support the channel so we can be here every day, as a lot is happening. It's overwhelming, but everything needs to be analyzed because the mainstream do not give us that African story. So we need to be able to tell our story by ourselves. Now, Kwame, so straight to the point, I mean, to the topic, the historical relationship of South Africa and U.S. has not been that there was no trust. There's a distrust from by the ANC of US's because of its historical reality, supporting apartheid regime during that time. And then there are a number of developments that we can talk about that happened recently that might have led to this. There are different things. We know that South Africa is not really the favorite country right now to the US, but now to really unfold that historical and reality, it will help us to understand where this problem, where this tension stems from. So what has been like the historical background of their relationship between these two countries?
Thank you, Mahlet. Actually, you have to admire the audacity of the United States on one side. Actually, on a serious note, I say this on a very serious note. You have to admire the audacity with which the United States comes and tries to push its narrative. Historically, South Africa, when it was fighting against apartheid, because the apartheid regime was terrorizing the African people after taking over the country, the land, economically, everything. South Africa fought against this apartheid, which was a continuation of colonialism, from the 1960s until, 1994, when President Mandela was elected as the new president. But in all this process, the only people who were on the side of South Africa during the liberation struggle, the liberation movement, the people who were on the side of the liberation movement was only Africa, countries like Cuba, countries like Russia, which was the Soviet Union during that period. So these were the countries which were on the side of the struggle of the of the liberation movement, the ANC and the Pan-African Congress. On the other side, Pan-African Congress, of course, is still existent. Of Mongaliso, Robert Mongaliso Sobukwe. I think we will come and talk about that another day. But the United States and Europe and its allies were never on the side of liberation, actually, even though today they paint themselves as champions of liberty. But historically, the United States, when you look at all liberation movements, true liberation movements, real liberation movements across the globe, the United States has never been on the side, the right side of history, or it has never been on the justice side of history. It has never been on the right side of history. And that is what you see that molded, this is what molded the relationship of the South African government. Once the liberation movement gained the power, ANC came to power, it never went out of the psyche of the liberation leaders. This is what molded the liberation struggle. This is what molded the relationship between the ANC, as we see it in South Africa, and the United States, and actually all the other European allies, because majority of the European countries also supported the apartheid regime. And this was when you go back to, you look at people like President Reagan, in broad daylight, those people who want to understand a little bit, even you can go and watch that movie, which was played by, that movie is called The Butler. The movie it was played by Forrest Whitaker. And that movie, in it, you could see that people like President Reagan, when they came to tell him that the United States needs to be on the right side of history by supporting the liberation movement in South Africa, because the apartheid regime was so brutal. It was killing innocent people, it was killing women, it was killing innocent men, it was killing students who were fighting for dignity and their rights. President Reagan went ahead to say that he does not care if the bill, if the resolution passes in Congress, which supports the liberation movement. He said that he will veto it. That is what President Reagan said during that time in the 1980s, 1989, as we were progressing and approaching the 1990s. So President Reagan decided to say that he will veto it if it passes through Congress, a bill which we want to support. So this is what molded the relationship between South Africa and the United States. So when we see what is happening today, that there is that friction, even people like Secretary of State Blinken actually, mentioned it a few months ago, and said that our relationship with South Africa, is tricky, is fragile, because unfortunately the United States has been on the wrong side of history with the support of the apartheid regime. But it did not stop there. The United States has been supporting brutal dictators all over, even in our African continent. You remember the killing of, Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba in the Congo. The United States went ahead to support the brutal dictator Mobutu Sese Seko. Right now, even right now, we are not even talking about not only history, but even right now, we see that the United States is supporting Israel in killing of the Palestinians today, just today. So to put it out there, the stand of South Africa has been the African stand, and has been the position that we have to take care of human rights in every capacity, regardless of the size of the nation. And this, Madame Naleda Pandor has mentioned it on numerous cases, that regardless of the size of the nation, it should be respected. It should have all the rights. We will not accept and we will not agree that a nation, because it is very big, it will go around bullying, other smaller nations, and it will claim because they have financial and economic power, their economy is huge, then we will deny the other people because they don't have money, they don't have that economic power. We'll deny them their rights, their, right to self-determination, their right to choice. Like right now, what is happening is interference with South Africa's, right to choice of partners across the globe, the right to choice of cooperation with other countries across the globe. South Africa has a right to have its own, choice of partners across the globe. It can choose Russia, it can choose China. It is a member of BRICS, for Christ's sake. So that is the friction which you are seeing right now, that the relationship historically, South Africa has maintained a position that is human rights friendly in action. And actually that goes on to all the other parts of or majority of the other parts of the world. When you're talking about the whole of Africa, we are talking about China, you are talking about Russia. These countries have maintained practically, they have maintained a position that has favored the liberation and freedom, while the United States and Europe has maintained a position, that position rhetorically, not in action. They just talk about it, but in action, they support, the brutality, the apartheid regimes. They support dictators. That is what they do, whether in South America, even when you are talking about South America, in Latin America, all over Nicaragua, Chile, Haiti. When you look at all these countries, it is the same position which the United States has. So it believes that the only way for it to achieve its objectives is to bully. And so this is what we are seeing that is happening in South Africa, that it is trying to bully South Africa. But South Africa has also stood its position and say, we will not be bullied, and you will not tell us what to do, in our own land. Yeah, so this is what we are seeing that is happening there.
Thank you very much, Kwame, for that historical background. We really needed. Sometimes we take things for granted. Oh, yes, they didn't have a good relationship during apartheid. Just the fact that because U.S. supported apartheid, but no, it's just deeper than that. And then it's important, of course, to remind us what happened elsewhere in the continent as well doesn't make U.S. a right. The right state or the right friendly country to the continent, because it always consciously or unconsciously has chosen to be on the wrong side of history. So that was really important. Thank you very much. Now, going to the core of it, what caused the tension between these two countries? We can speculate, but just let me throw some things like, okay, just departing from that strained historical background or historical reality, they have been able to establish a bilateral relationship, have embassies, and they have been working on certain things together. But that distrust still is deep seated in ANC. I mean, it's not something to be forgotten, of course. It's just a recent memory. Now, we have seen, of course, during the Ukraine-Russia war, a number of African countries have abstained, and South Africa was one of it. And also, South Africa also laid the peace process or the peace deal of Ethiopia, really refusing for any other intervention, and then being the strong promoter of African solution to African problems. There's a military drill between South Africa, China, and Russia. There are other things that added. There's BRICS, and then there's also Putin. That warrant to arrest him, and him coming in August. South Africa, and also having a minister like the foreign relation minister, a Pan-African woman, really strong of Miss Padora, correct me her name, I apologize. But
yeah,
she's
Madam Naleda Pando.
Naleda Pando, yeah, very outspoken and apologetic. Who told Secretary Blinken in his face at that time has passed. You cannot choose friends who we are going to be befriended with. So we have seen some of the things that might have led. Now, putting this on the face, that accusing South Africa on allegedly supplying arms to Russia, is that really the real cause of this tension?
Thank you that you have actually mentioned some of these. You have mentioned some of these issues, but let us see the response. There's a background. In the background, there's what went on that after the ambassador of the United States, Ambassador Bridget, mentioning and making these comments about how South Africa supplied Russia with weapons. He was summoned, to the Ministry of Foreign Relations to explain his comments, because he had he put up even a press conference in South Africa. That is when he made these comments, and I think personally that the South African Ministry of Foreign Relations needs to rein in actually a little bit more. It needs to up its game when it comes to supervision of such subversive elements within the country. That an ambassador like him, he has no right, to summon, to do a press conference in the country and make such comments without the knowledge, without the knowledge, of the government. We remember that the United States in the past has done such things as this, what it has done right now, whereby it issued a statement claiming that there's going to be terrorist attacks in South Africa. That was last year. I think it was around October or November, around that period, which South Africa's government was not very happy with. And South Africa has looked at this, has continued to look at this as some sort of undermining the ANC. And so it is in a very difficult position. South Africa itself is in a very difficult, situation right now, is in a difficult position, that it is playing it is playing, a very difficult game right now. On one side, South Africa wants to maintain a neutral position on the Russia-Ukraine issue, and which, it would not have maintained. It would have been on the Russian side, but it has decided to maintain a neutral position. It wants to also represent the African continent on one side. And that is why you see that the President Cyril Ramaphosa was invited to Washington before the U.S. Africa Summit last year, because South Africa was being looked at as, even right up to right now, is looked at as a leader. As you know, is one of the biggest economies. We have the biggest economy, Nigeria, the second biggest economy, South Africa, the third biggest economy, Egypt. So it is one of the leaders of the economy of the African continent in many aspects. So that is one position. So South Africa is trying to play its leadership role of the continent. As we have seen, Nigeria is not really playing when it comes to international relations. Nigeria is not really playing a significant, role, a leadership role, which is supposed to represent the whole African continent. It's sort of like it has been subjugated completely. Nigeria has been completely subjugated, that it cannot say anything. The leaders, are so out of touch. So South Africa is trying to play that important, Pan-African role, leadership role on the African continent. On the other side, we have South Africa is part of the BRICS. That is another issue that we are seeing. So South Africa being part of BRICS, and in June is going to host the BRICS summit, is also another issue. It mandates it to behave as a member of BRICS. And the United States, on the other side, is increasingly seeing BRICS as a threat to its dominance. As you remember, they have spoken about the establishment of the currency, the BRICS currency. So the United States is trying all it can to undermine the arrangements of this meeting, because the currency issue of the displacement of the dollar, as BRICS, we have mentioned numerous times that BRICS is trying to establish its own BRICS currency. So it means that if this currency is established, and many countries have asked it to join BRICS, Egypt, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Iran, many countries have asked it to join BRICS. So if this currency is established, that means this could be the end of the dollar. I'm not saying it is, but it could be. So this is what the United States is seeing. And it thinks that it is important to interrupt and disrupt this meeting. So these that we are seeing right now, they are geared, these are tactics geared towards the interruption, the disruption of that meeting, to scare South Africa, to see, it is trying actually its hand to see if South Africa will be able to give in to the threat. It is carrying out a threat. This is what we are seeing. And also on the other side, the fact that they have mentioned that BRICS, during the BRICS summit that is going to happen, President Putin will be in South Africa. They have mentioned that they will protect President Putin, and they will not cave into the demands of the International Criminal Court. President Cyril Ramaphosa came out and mentioned it himself that they will pull out of the ICC. He has contacted these people so that they can start arrangements of coming out of the ICC. So this was a message to the imperialists, the United States and Europe, that they are not going to arrest Putin. This was a clear message. That is what he was trying to mean. I don't think President Cyril Ramaphosa was trying to mean that they are going to pull out of the ICC completely. What he was trying to communicate to them is that we are not going to arrest President Putin, and he's going to come here for the summit. It was just a clear message, but it was a veiled message. So they are trying to test the United States and its allies. They are trying to test that resolve. They are trying to test the resolve of the ANC to see if it will follow up on those statements which it made. And so that is what we are seeing, that they are trying to threaten and cause that chaos. Like I said, last year, they put out a statement. The United States Embassy in South Africa put out a statement to claim that there's going to be a terrorist attack in South Africa, which was an undermining, which was an undermining statement to the government in South Africa. And South Africa did not take it lightly. So it is continuing in that, tradition of bullying to see if it will be able to achieve its objective. So typically, it is bullying, the normal bullying of the United States. But on the other hand, also, we see that the United States, because of the way it is losing power, it has become paranoid, it has become desperate. So this shows on one hand that it is very desperate. There's fear of the BRICS as an organization. The fear of the BRICS currency is what is causing this desperation. That a grown man, a full grown man came out and said in front of the media that he's willing to put his life on his statements which he made. This is what the man said, that he is willing to put his life, or all his life, on the statements which he's making, that the ship.
Can you elaborate on that, Kwame? Sorry.
Yes, I'm saying that the Ambassador Bridget, came out to mention that he is willing to put his life. He said he was willing to put his life on his assertions that which he made, that a Russian ship which docked in South Africa, or at the South African port, took weapons. He said that he's willing to put his life on it. But this is a scenario which, of course, we have seen on numerous times, that this is the United States politicians, they don't have this integrity. If you look at what happened with Iraq, of course, and Afghanistan, that they came and said, people like Colin Powell, who came to the United Nations and mentioned that there is weapons of mass destruction. He came with pictures, and they said they have taken satellite pictures. You see, that there's weapons of mass destruction, and this is what led to the war. So when Ambassador Bridget mentions, or says things like this, that he's willing to put his life on his statements, it does not surprise us, because they have done this in the past during the Iraq war, the build up to the Iraq war, that they even came to the United Nations with papers and pictures and said they are satellite pictures. They said these are the trucks which Saddam is using now. They are using mobile equipment to mix the chemicals which are making the weapons of mass destruction. And it was not true. So they do not have integrity within them. And these are the things which we are seeing that is driving, these are the things which are driving the United States, in its steps that it is taking. The fear of the BRICS currency, the fact that Putin is going to be in South Africa, and of course the summit has come, is a few a few weeks remaining before the summit will come on. So they are trying to test South Africa's resolve when it comes to hosting this, summit. And of course, they are paranoid, very paranoid, and they are very terrified, and they are very desperate. They are very desperate. That is why you see that they are continuing to push in the direction that is even if it doesn't make sense, they feel that they are supposed to push it. Even if the people have realized that the United States is desperate, he doesn't have the right to do whatever it is doing, to say whatever it is saying, because you cannot claim that Ambassador Bridget said these things on his own. He definitely received the orders from Washington to make these statements, because these statements are not founded. They are not rooted in any investigation. And even though these statements were rooted in any investigation, he has no right, the United States has no right to act as the supervisor across the globe, because the only document that we are supposed to follow as the nations of the world is the United Nations Charter. And the United Nations Charter does not mention anywhere that the United States shall supervise everyone across the globe in their relations with other nations, or in their trade relations, in their assistance. The United Nations Charter doesn't mention anything like that. So it tells you that he was receiving orders from Washington. Clearly, it shows you that he was receiving these orders, from Washington, because an individual like him cannot just wake up and come and make, those assertions and make those statements, before the whole world.
Thank you, Kwame. Again, our final question is, of course, to discuss on what should be, of course, the measures that South Africa should take, what should be the position, and then other Africans, Pan-Africanists, what should be their position, our position as well. But before that, I want you to give us your view. What will be the consequence? I mean, this tension, what do you think will it come to? Will it diffuse quickly, or if it continues to escalate, then what are the consequences? It's I mean, the usual procedures are already being spoken out by the U.S. Sanctions, travel ban, freezing accounts, this and that. Well, we know that. I mean, there's nothing new in it, but if it does so, because it's dividing South Africans, people are, I read some of the comments, and South Africans are trying to separate ANC from the South African people. And is that a good thing for the South African government, which is actually really a good result for the US if they really separate? So what will be the consequence? And then we go to what should be the position of South Africa.
I believe that the United States has a lot of investments, of course, in South Africa, and definitely, if it decided to start using sanctions against South Africa, it would hurt South Africa, because it has a lot of corporations in South Africa. But it would also hurt, the United States itself. Let us not get this, twisted and think that it would only hurt South Africa. It would hurt the United States itself, because the United States is already in an economic depression, and that depression, as what has contributed to it, is because of the United States behavior of applying sanctions to everyone it doesn't agree with. You see what happened with Russia, that majority of the United States corporations pulled out of Russia, and now we are seeing an economic depression, in the United States, banks collapsing and all this. We discussed this in the previous, in some of the previous analysis which we did, and we encourage, of course, our viewers to go out there and look for those analyses which we have done in the past 2 weeks about the United States dollar and the collapse of the banks in the United States. So it would hurt the United States also. It would hurt South Africa. But we have seen that South Africa is standing on a moral position, morally South Africa, this is what it cares about the most, because South Africa's economy already, it has already some challenges right now. It has not been growing enough. It has been growing by 1.5%, even though the other African economies have been growing by leaps and bounds by 7-8%, 6%. If you go to places like Uganda, Ghana, they have been growing even to, sometimes by 7%. Ethiopia, sometimes 8%. This one. So South Africa has already been having those challenges. Definitely, it has been having a challenge. But again, we have seen President Cyril Ramaphosa move across the continent in the past. I believe that these have been moves by South Africa to try to strengthen its position. We saw that during his visit to Kenya, they were able to come up with a deal that will be able to merge South Africa Airways with Kenya Airways, both airlines which have been, of course, struggling economically and even in performance, as we have seen that South Africa has been posting a lot of losses. Even Kenya Airways has been posting a lot of losses. So there is that, attempt to merge these two airlines. And what has he been achieving? What has he been trying to achieve? What he's trying to achieve is trying to connect South Africa with the regional economies. You saw that he invited President Museveni of Uganda. These are some of the major trading partners. He invited Kenya, invited President Museveni. He visited Kenya. President Ramaphosa visited Kenya. He invited Museveni. He also invited, I think, President Suluhu of Tanzania. They have had these conversations with President Suluhu. So he's trying to connect these East African region economies, major economies, with South Africa, so that in case these sanctions have come up, South Africa is still resilient to be able to withstand them. We can see Zimbabwe has been able to withstand for more than 20 years, has been able to withstand sanctions because it had the support of the regional, countries, especially South Africa has been a major support, a major bloc which has, supported SADC. Countries have supported Zimbabwe immensely during this struggle when it has been going through the unjustified and racist illegal sanctions by the United States and its European allies. So what we are seeing is that South Africa has been strengthening that position, and South Africa, I think that it has also noticed the shift in power. That is why you see that the foreign, policy has been very assertive. You just spoke here about, for example, Madam Naleda Pandor, in how she's been speaking, when people like Senator Blinken, Secretary Blinken visited South Africa. She was very firm in her talk, in her speech. Even when she went to the United States, she went to give the speech, the South African speech at the United Nations General Assembly. So you could see that the position is very strong in the support, for example, of Palestine. So they are not going to abandon that just because the United States is putting up threats. They're not going to abandon that position. South Africa is not going to abandon that position just because the United States and Europe are pushing threats. And South Africa knows that it is on the right side of history. Morally, it is on the right side of history in the support for Palestine, in the support of all the other countries that it's supposed to support, and in its position, because South Africa has continuously maintained the position that the war in Ukraine should be solved peacefully. The United States, on the other hand, is continuing to fuel the violence, is continuing to push for violence in Ukraine and pushing more weapons, even though Russia has agreed that they should negotiate. Russia is willing and ready to negotiate. The United States is saying they should not negotiate, is continuing to push weapons. But then the same country is blaming others in case they want to support Russia. And yet it is already also supporting Ukraine and pushing billions and billions of dollars of weapons in Ukraine together with Europe. They just, released the tanks, the one of the most advanced battle tanks. The United States has just released it. The Abrams is going to be supplied to Ukraine. Germany also released those tanks and supplied some of the most modern battle tanks. The Leopard 2 is going to be released to Ukraine. Britain, so all these countries, they are releasing more weapons and billions of dollars of weapons every day, but they are telling everyone that all the others, they should not give help to Russia, and yet for them they are giving. So it's the same tactics which were being used against China. If you remember that they were threatening China, that China should not help. If it there helps, Russia, all these threats were, being used. But I think that South Africa will not abandon its position, its moral position where it is standing. It is not willing to jeopardize its relationship with the BRICS countries, and the fact that it is the one which is also hosting the BRICS summit this year. So this is the very reason South Africa is going to stick to its guns and is not going to give in to any threats from the United States.
Thank you very much, Kwame. The only thing you did not touch is maybe in general the position of Africa in terms of institution AU. What should it be? When countries continue to be bullied by the U.S. just because they stand on their feet and have that courage, brevity to say no and speak. And choose their friends with who they want to be befriended. What should be the position in terms of AU or African leaders in general, Africa itself, Africans, people like us, have the platform, Pan-Africanists?
Yeah, so for us to, I remember what Mo Ibrahim mentioned during the Mo Ibrahim leadership summit, which happened in Nairobi. He mentioned that the governments need to, the African governments need to support the African civil society and empower it, and especially those governments which are in a position to understand that the continent needs to work together, needs to be unified. Because this was some of the, these were some of the things. These were some of the things which Mo Ibrahim emphasized during the Mo Ibrahim leadership weekend, which happened in Nairobi. So those governments in South Africa, and it is very good that even though the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters of South Africa, of Julius Malema, is in the opposition, it's very good that it was also able to take on that position to support, the government, the ANC. It it supported the government. It spoke in support of the South African government, and that is a very good sign that even though there may be some little opposition, some little groups which may support the other side, but at least one of the major opposition, parties in the country, at least on this position, is able to work with the ruling government, which is the ANC, and that is the ANC, which is a very good sign. This is a very good sign. So from now going forward, we have to remember as Africans that for us to defeat colonialism, which was being, in fact, as we've mentioned, the apartheid regime, this colonialism, which was being supported by the United States and Europe, because Europe was the one colonizing, we are going to have to continue to work together. We have to understand that we have to work together. We have to tag team. We have to hold the hands in order for us to defeat this kind of bullying, this kind of colonialism. If South Africa, the sanctions are imposed on South Africa, we do not need to wait like how we waited for 20 years without supporting Zimbabwe. We have to immediately come in, and even right now, we have to extend our support. We have to extend our support to the government in South Africa. If you need to write it. If you need to come to your platform and talk about it and speak about it on YouTube platforms, on radio stations, come out and speak about it and give support to South Africa. In the same way, we saw that we supported Ethiopia. A lot of Ethiopians came out and supported, a lot of Africans came out and supported Ethiopia. This is what we need now. We need to work together as Africans. On the civil society level, we need to work together to understand when imperialism is trying to attack us and is trying to attack any one of us on the African continent. whether it is Mali, whether it is Burkina Faso, we need to do that. So going forward, we need to understand that the only way for us to defeat the bully and the colonialist United States and its allies is for us to work together as Africans. We have to organize and work together. We have to tag team. We have to tag team in order for us to defeat the United States. We have to stop rationalizing. You know, I've heard a lot of people rationalizing about when we are talking about unifying Africa as a single state, working together as Africans and rebuilding ourselves. People rationalizing and saying, oh, we have 1,000 languages, we have 20,000 languages, we have 2,000 languages. When we come together as Africans, we are not looking at unifying the languages into one languages. We are looking at providing the necessities of life, working together with all of us to provide to us on the continent and even the African diaspora all the necessities of life: good health, good education, good roads, good infrastructure. These are the things. Good accommodation, water, everyone should have water, everyone should have energy, everyone should have communication. We are not looking at abolishing languages. And with the advent of technology which has come in our generation, we should be able to bridge the gap between the languages. Whether you are from Egypt, whether you are from Algeria, and I'm from South Africa, we should be able to bridge that gap because the technology has come to bridge that gap. So the idea of rationalizing that we cannot work together as Africans because of this and that reason, I think we have to abandon it. We have to abandon it. And majority of the people should immediately abandon it because we can work together. There's no reason why we cannot work together. And these are some of the things which Mo Ibrahim was addressing, you know, when he was having his recent weekend, leadership weekend in Kenya. These were some of the things he was asking, why can't we work together? And he's from Sudan, imagine. But he's asking, why can't Africa work together? What is the problem? What is the problem with you people that you can't work together? Why do you want to be in the corners where you are going to be bullied? These bullies, the United States and Europe, they are doing whatever they are doing, bullying each of the small countries because we have chosen to be in the corner, you know, working in our corners. We don't want to work together. And these bullies, they get a chance. They celebrate. They go on the side and they celebrate that they have now a chance to bully people who have decided to, put their back and put their faces in the corner and work alone instead of working with their brothers. So these are things which we have to bridge as Africans, and we have to be very realistic, with these issues. We have to be very serious with them because this is a matter of life and death. This is a matter of survival. If we cannot do it, we will be colonized, and will be colonized in a very, very much brutal way. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you very much, Kwame, for that, words and sound. It was really important to remind us also, everybody think, oh, we got more than 2,000 language and then that doesn't unite us. Yes, it's important to underline. It's not about abolishing. It's enough. That's the colonizers, what they have done in terms of erasing our history and our language and everything. The African unity is totally against that. But yeah, what I was thinking, actually, speaking of the African unity, I was just reflecting on this today, in the daytime. We have leaders who are Pan-African leaders, and those leaders, you see them usually being attacked by the U.S. And its allies in the West, and then it's easier because we are still 55 sovereign states in our little territory. Then to keep us like that will help the U.S. now to come and say to the people of for example, South Africa is the topic for today. The South African people, look, this is what there is, this alienating of the leader from the people, and then attacking, demonizing him, and then creating that mob against that leader. But if we really value, even if at this point, those who are opposing President Ramaphosa, for whatever reason it is, if you tell them, me as an Ethiopian, you as a Ghanaian, that actually, you know, from the outside, when you look at it, the guy has done this and that, he's a Pan-African leader, they don't even want to grasp it. But if there was that goal or that unity for us, we are under the umbrella of African unity, then you don't look at what's happening really to the people of South Africa, but you will look at to the bigger picture. It will be very easier. Otherwise, you know, it's always, you see them, you know, again and again falling in that trap. Whenever they are Pan-African leader, there is this opposition that they face in their own country, and then finally, of course, using their own people and assassinating them. So it's really a savior, the African unity, that principle, that unity, that thing produced by Kwame Nkrumah. It's I kind of, it always seemed for me like very depths, but today I kind of got, you know, the edge of it, and then like, okay, this is what he meant by unite or perish, you know. So it's really, I don't know, I'm in what language.
Yeah. So what Nkrumah was saying actually is not that us coming together we should abolish our cultures. I know that a lot of people, they misunderstand the concept of African unity. The concept of African unity, as Nkrumah was presenting it, it was not for speaking one language and removing all the other languages, but rather like what the AU right now has. It has these numerous languages. It has Arabic, it has English, it has French, it has Portuguese, it has Swahili. We would have communication languages. We could have a major language which we use as communication across the continent. But that does not mean that we abolish our cultures and we abolish our languages. So that is what I want people to understand about African unity. African unity is meant to protect actually these cultures, these diverse cultures which we have in Africa, and prevent the incursion or encroachment on them that we have seen from the West. We have seen they're forcing us of accepting things like homosexuality and all other values which are from the West. So this unity was supposed to provide a blanket, a cover, a fence across all the African continent, so that the Africans within the continent can practice whatever they want. But we have African unity to protect us all, which we don't have today. So today we don't have that protection, and the United States can go anywhere on the continent. Europe can go anywhere on the continent. China can go anywhere on the continent. They can enter the continent anyhow, because the continent now has more than 55 doors instead of one door. So they enter through 55 doors, which we cannot see, all of us cannot see. And that is why you see that, you know, German can have a military base in Mali, can have troops in Mali, anywhere in the Sahel, when the people in the southern part of the continent are not aware that this is happening. So our unity, France, of course, also, France can have troops on the African continent. The United States can have more than 30 military bases all over the African continent, but the other Africans are not aware that these military bases are here, and they are dangerous to all of us, because we have seen what the United States has been doing with these military drones, you know, in Somalia, in Yemen, and in the Middle East, killing innocent people. So these drones are a danger to all of us. So the unity was supposed to provide that blanket, that fence all over the African continent, so that we can have only one door in which anyone who wants to deal with Africans can come through. So this is what Nkrumah meant by unifying Africa. We were meant to have a single currency, all of us across the continent. We were supposed to have a single foreign policy. We were supposed to have a single central bank and economic policy, so that we can work together on the things which we can achieve together, But those differences, the things in which we are different, like our tribes, we were not supposed to abolish those. Rather, we were supposed to celebrate them. Even when we come together, those things, we were supposed to celebrate them and protect them. That is the only way we would protect them. But what you see today, because we have not achieved that unity, and of course, we are fighting for it. Don't mistake me that we are not fighting for it. Let not anyone mistake it that we are not fighting for it, or we are not going to fight for it. We are still fighting for it. But because we have not achieved, you can see this bullying going on. If Africa was a unified government and we have a single government, there's no way the United States would come around to bully South Africa. There's no way, because it would have to contend with one unified African state. But these opportunities, of course, they are there because of the fragmentation that has continued. But the cultures and the differences and the diversity which we have as Africans was meant to be celebrated within the United Africa.
Thank you very much, Kwame. Yeah, you always you share your view, your knowledge, anything that you have information unreservedly, and yeah, I really like that, and I have respect for that. Our viewer at CNS said Sheikh Anta Diop talked of cultural continuity for Africa, where all communities have a common culture, only expressed with some variations throughout the continent. So I think he's just suggesting for us, speaking of that African unity, it doesn't mean that to abolish languages. Right, so we have come to the end of it. Thank you very much. That was really an improvement. The 56 minutes, it's good. I mean, anything that we share is, of course, here is good, but yeah, in terms of time, I think we have used our time wisely. And yeah, so next, as Kwame said in the beginning, next Thursday or the coming Thursday, we are going to talk about this investment conference by President Macron, right, Kwame?
Yes, President Macron hosted a conference, an investment conference, in which also Elon Musk also was able to attend. So we want to look at if France is trying to attract investment within its country, and yet we are always saying that as Africans we are trying to attract investment from France and French investors, all this. So what should this, tell us? What should be our position? So what kind of investments are we attracting from France? Yet it is also looking for investments from people like Elon Musk. And also us, which African country has taken the step to invite people like Elon Musk so that we can have these high value investments? Because if we are going to develop as Africa, we have to attract the right investments. But we have not, if you look at the data and you look at the figure, you look at the activities that have been going on, we have not been able to attract the right investments on the African continent. We are instead attracting petty investments, what I would call street investments. They are not real, house investments, which you can talk about. So that is what we want to discuss. So if Macron was inviting investors into France and try to convince them that they should invest in France, then what investments have we been going to France to ask for investors to come and invest in Africa? So these are the things which we want to discuss in the next broadcast, which will happen on Thursday.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kwame. Yeah, that sounds very interesting. So let's go with the homework that all of us can read a bit about it, and yeah, come to ask a question. That's the way we do it. It's a research-based broadcast. So thank you very much. Siende said, of course, the book of Sheikh Anta Diop is called The Cultural Unity of Black Africa. Thank you very much, Siende, for your suggestion. We will check it out. He wrote it in 1959, apparently. Okay. Yeah. Have a good evening, and please share this video with your network. Yeah, help us in disseminating this important information, this knowledge. Of course, if you find it interesting. And then also, if you want to support our channel, go to our PayPal account, which I share here on the chat section. I will put it also after this stream is over in the comment section. And yeah, so that we can be here every day or more times, like 3 times or 4 times a week. But thank you for being with us. The number doesn't matter, but we know that you are here without in and doubt. That means it tells us that we are delivering something that what we needed to hear. So yeah, thank you. Have a good evening. Bye Kwame. Thank you. Ciao.